Songwriting, always found it kind of easy, in a way. My music is not something you'll hear on the radio. It's always been kind of probably abstract. Very, very inspired by pop music. I love pop music. I really love 80s pop. Something I've never hidden and stuff. Obviously, when it came to the guitar, of course, was, the thing that I'm probably known for, but it actually isn't my first instrument. The first instrument was actually keyboard. It was piano. We always had a piano in the house. And even prior to that, my first instrument, to be perfectly honest, was my voice. How I've written pretty much everything, besides, everything, is basically this. I've always sung it. So if I can't hear it, I really can't play it. And it was quite funny when I wasn't quite sure what the process was for them today. And then sort of I saw the actual thing, we're doing an old song, a new song, and a cover. And because I sing everything, that means I'm not playing the guitar first. I'm not playing any instrument first. I'm actually just hearing the melody in my head. And that was the stumbling block for, I think, myself and so many other musicians. Like, you can hear the melody in your head, but it's trying to hear the other stuff behind it that sort of fills it in. But it actually sort of made it easy for me to remember, this first song that I did. I wrote this back in 1989. I started playing the guitar in 88, so it's bloody old. And it's just, but the funny thing was, what inspired it? In that first year of playing the guitar, I was inspired by all the flashy guitar players and stuff like that. So, you start working on your technique and the other bits and pieces, and that's all cool. And I realised I sucked at it, so I sort of gave myself a bit of a break and just started playing the things I was hearing in my head. My friends were the opposite. They were too busy trying to learn songs to show off at school, or whatever it was, and getting really stressed out, whereas I was having a crap load of fun. So one of the first things I ever bought was a 4-track recorder. It was a Fostex XE20, because I realised recording things was the way to be able to sort of listen back, hear things, scrutinise, to be perfectly honest, and figure that sort of stuff out. Now, I'm from Greyland, and Greyland is a place where everyone would love to be now. It would cost you $1 billion to live there. But back in the 70s and 80s, it was a shithole. So it was basically primarily Polynesian families, poor working families. There was 4 Maori families, I believe, maybe a couple of Pākehā families. There wasn't that many, really. And it was a tough place. And the first band I was in, which is in that 89 thing, all the boys came from gang families. They were all black power. So it was just, it was rough, And because it was rough, the kids were having a tough, really shit time. And one of my mates, who I grew up with, his name is Morris Tacoma. He's from Tokelau. Great voice, man, jeez. We were I was playing him some of my weird songs. And they were weird, because the stuff that we were playing in the bands at the time were Deep Purple and all the metal stuff and everything else as well, and all that type of shit. And I was like, okay, that's cool. And we enjoyed it, and we could play it extremely well. But the funny thing was, the music that I was hearing in my head was completely different. For starters, it was major. It had a happier sound. I didn't really truly know what that was at the time. It wasn't minor. It wasn't flash. It was all about melody. The whole thing was about the tunes I could hear in my head. And because I would try to capture the songs in my head, I would just record me singing it. I do it now. We have a phone. In those days, I just used my parents' double cassette deck thing. And then I got a little Hitachi cassette recorder. That thing was genius. I still have all these tapes. I literally have tapes of me playing the guitar within 1 week of me picking it up. It was horrible. But I've kept them because it's quite funny. On the rare instance, I'll have a student I don't teach anymore nowadays, but basically for a long time I did. And if I had one student who was extremely depressed about, oh, but you can do such and such, whatever it is, I'd play them the tape. And it's like, well, here's the guy you think's like, woo, and I couldn't string 3 notes together properly, you know. So it just required work and passion and love and all that type of stuff just to get into it. So in this particular year, I had moved on from trying to show off, got the other stuff and did these things. And Morris came around one day. And it was a horrible year in Greyland. We have the Greyland Park, which is extremely famous now from all these movies they have, all the Polynesians and stuff. But truly, what happened in that particular year, yeah, we had 4 or 5 of our friends kill themselves. I mean, they literally hung themselves in the park off the basketball hoops. It was nasty because they were depressed and couldn't see a way out, all that type of stuff. It was kind of shit. And we were sort of, yeah, you know, just like, shit, this is rubbish. You know, I'm lucky. I have a sort of a general sort of upbeat nature. Morris took it really hard, but he came up with this little line. And so, for instance, I don't sing. I sing melodies, that's fine. This is how I make music, and it's how I can hear it. And the hardest thing at the time was to hear that background stuff, the harmony, you know, to make it right. And there's a process I have for that now I find it very easy, but at the time, you know, I was just basically discovering it. But I was using logic. And the words he came up with is, your life is a miracle. It's right here in your hands. You know, the love should be spiritual because the flesh doesn't last upon this land. And that basically was the instigator for this weird tune. I discovered a particular type of sound, which at the time, remember, I'm 16, was a major 7th arpeggio. And very easy to sing. So that was the thing. It was like, oh, I've got a G chord here. The chords involved in the song are particularly not flash. They're a very standard 4-chord thing. But because I was singing the melody itself, and actually, if you ever go to Greyland, the corner of Beaconsfield Street, you go up 2 blocks, you've got a Tongan church. Okay, you can hear them on Sundays singing the massive choir. It's beautiful. It's amazing. You can hear these melodies coming out from there. And to me, that was almost like a hymn. It had a particular power to it. And so when I was having... So that's what I heard. So then the idea was like, okay, I'm going to, you know, the ego's there. You're 16 years old. You need to put some sort of flash into it. It wasn't. You'll hear it. The thing is that at the end of that little melody there, I went off somewhere strange, where basically, and it was it threw me off. It threw me off. But because I'm singing it, it's easy because I've already recorded the vocal. So basically. That type of stuff. It just went there. So they were the same chords. Please understand, at the time, the scales that I'd figured out that worked in it didn't work anymore. They threw me off. It was just like, oh, crap. You know, it was bizarre. It was, okay, something has happened here. I was very confused. The worst thing about some of these tapes is you can actually hear me swearing halfway through it as I'm getting completely lost through my own stuff, because I didn't have the facility at the time to understand what I was doing. But the song's called Miracle. So it starts off sort of, it's an instrumental. And then at the end of this point is when Morris would come in and he sung this thing. And I had this little band we actually put together, and we played some really weird music. And the cool thing about Auckland at the time was I ended up playing 2-3 times a week easily in Auckland town, playing at a place called the Temple Cafe, Murphy's Irish Bar, which had the London Jazz Bar above it and stuff. And these guys just had this weird little Maori boy playing. It was all electric, so acoustic's not the easiest thing. And did it. So I'm just going to muddle through it. Now, by the way, I've just done a functionally beat just to keep things in check and stuff like that, and we'll see how it goes. Oh, other thing, inspiration. There's a lick I do. I just did it beforehand, before sound check. That thing, okay? I do that all the damn time. I've been playing that lick probably now for, was it 32, 33 years? I don't know. It's from Jimmy Page, right? If you've just listened to Led Zepp, everyone knows it's everywhere, right? So the whole song was based around that, trying to be flashy. Excuse me if things go to crap, because my legs are short and I'm as tall as Laura. Okay. Shortened version. So at the end, it was pretty with basically your life is a miracle. You could hear the uplift thing. We were trying to talk to our friends to say, stop killing yourselves, for crying out loud. Honestly, it was just bullshit. And it didn't. You know, we had 3 years of complete and utter shit at the end of the day. But it's just one of those things, you know, stuff we don't talk about. We're not talking about it now. It's 30 years later and stuff, with the things where, you know, children are just not really grasping stuff. You know, it's hard. I understand that and things. And I chose to become a musician. How stupid was that? Yeah, but it turned out to work out extremely well. But that's what inspires me. You know, I run on feelings. Being Maori, being basically brought up very, very tough father. You know, we were the first generation out of the bush. Dad was out of Wainaro Springs. That's the middle of nowhere, okay? It's north of Raglan. He lived in a shack. It's smaller than that space over there. Family of 10 or 11. You know, whole concept of stuff was just beyond. People don't understand what it is. And then to come to Auckland and stuff, you have to deal with the internal racism, all the other garbage and everything else that's going on too. You know, you grow up a little bit tough at the end of the day. So you didn't show this type of thing. Music allowed me to be able to express things that I was feeling that I couldn't say. I didn't know how to say. If I did say it, you'd be called all sorts of names from your mates in the first place. That was the antithesis of the music we were playing. I was playing 80s metal and stuff like that. You know, it was all about sex, drugs and rock and roll. We were running around. And, you know, the band I got into, we did extremely well. We had a top 10 hit playing this crap, you know. And it was not music I would naturally lean towards, but I'm really good at it. And so discovering yourself as a musician at the time was extremely difficult, you know, and almost every musician goes through this point where they're going to listen to their music and go, it doesn't sound like the stuff I really like. Why can't I sound the same as that person that I admire so much? So for all of us musicians, as we go through this growing period, we have to learn to actually like ourselves. You know, some of us do, and we'll do well. Others won't, and it becomes extremely tough. You know, it's the same with anyone in any form of art, to actually be able to accept yourself. I managed to figure this out extremely early. I then also managed to understand I needed to get out from certain particular groups of things, you know, so I could actually do this without being judged and all that type of stuff. It was extremely important, and I did it. It was the best thing I ever did. You know, I'm very lucky. I've had an amazing life of music. And something else, I mean, everyone knows me from Music Planet, that's fine, but for 20 years I was playing original music only. I've done nothing else but. And it made me a lot of money. I did extremely well out of it. You know, it's, and it was always based off the same sort of thing. So those songs that I did through the 90s, for instance, were songs I wrote prior to playing the guitar. They became guitar songs, but actually they were melodies and ideas that I'd actually written on piano. Because again, this is my first instrument, not this one. When it comes to music, I fell in love with the written note. I really like the way transcript looks. I love notation. To me, it's sexy. You know, it's just one of those things. I learned to read music by writing music. Admittedly, I had 1 year of my life where my band Scarf, we were touring, so I had nothing else to do in the back of a van. So I literally read and taught myself properly how to read music, doing all sorts of violin music, you name it, other bits and pieces. But it was for myself. It was a lot of fun. All the other boys were doing other stuff. I was learning. At the end of that tour, I was stronger than I was when I started. Physically weak. Hadn't eaten properly for friggin' ages, but, you know, had a good, strong brain. And I'd written a lot of music too at the same time. So, yeah, my process of writing music has always been exactly the same. I will sing the melody first. A lot of my students and stuff like that have known this. I've always found that if I played the guitar first, you're limited by your physical ability. You're also limited by your knowledge of the chord. So, for instance, you know, immediately once you play one chord, you're more than likely, depending on the on what you've been listening to, you're going to go to the most obvious option. And it's not even the option that you wanted. You know, there's no reason to go from a G to a C. You just do it. Now, immediately as soon as you do that, in my personal feeling, you're stuck in prison because you're no longer doing truly what it was. And that song there allowed me to understand that there were alternatives to go around it. Instead of playing, you know, the major scale, I could. I could go. You know, I mean, you had to listen to your ear first and let that do the thing. So that's why I've never really, I mean, my wife's seen me do this. I'll do it all in my head. You know, even when we do covers, I'll I'll hear it. I'll just sing it in my head. Once I got the idea, I've got it. Then I'll pick the guitar up and play the bloody thing. It's so this is just my choice of instrument to do it because I've gotten better at it. The next song, seriously, since working, kids, that type of stuff in your house as well. Original music, I love it. I always have melodies going in my head. Very rarely is the stereo on in my car because I've got a huge thing going on over here. More often than not, I forget to turn the stereo on in the shop because I'm actually got an awful lot of stuff going on in the back of my brain. I keep forgetting that there's no music for everyone else, that type of stuff. Like I said, my cell phone has a ridiculous amount of just melodies and things that I sing. And 3 years of teaching and stuff, it was basically, the word I learnt was from a Steve Vai thing. Now, by the way, everyone sort of associates with the rock guitar crap I play, that was a bit Steve Vai. No way. Prince was my main inspiration, seriously, just the way he did stuff. You could tell that he was hearing all this stuff first and then letting it out. Hence the way the songs evolved and all that type of stuff. And you can usually hear when a singer, like Dolly Parton's another one, you can tell she's singing the thing and then she simply adds the harmony onwards because the key changes she does are bizarre in some of the songs. They're not things you would do on purpose because your hands would not normally go there, that type of stuff. So I had this little melody one time. I had a stint down in Wellington, and I sang a very, very simple thing. It was basically a little pentatonic. So I had a little sort of this major pentatonic thing, and then had a little minor shift. And I don't know, it just sort of struck me. I always liked going for the melodies that are just, true, in your head, that's the thing. Don't try to be a smart ass, So the second part is so my job now is just to harmonise it. It's just to put the thing on it. So I'm not going to be dumb here. If the first note's a C, I'm going to play a C. So the chords I used there was simply just they had to harmonise the melody. What the hell's that? Isn't that chord? It's horrible, It's not a chord you'd do normally if you were playing chords. It just had to fit the melody. So it had to So because I'm always leading with the melody first, it's allowed me to play semi-traditional chord things, but then also go off into where it should go. Because, like I said, remember my whole thing anyway is about trying to find that little magic juice thing in the back, the harmony. What was the chord that actually made that melody sound correct? You know, for me, it's like a giant orchestra with a keyboard thing shoved in the back of my head. And then the next part, for instance, this one here is actually kind of tough because it has a key change at the end that, you know, at about 5:45, I think I recorded on this thing. And I think I got it wrong. Yeah, I wanted it to, there's a hanging tone and stuff, and it was just those, and I think I was holding on to this note. Where the hell that goes, I don't even know. You know, just a normal cadence. By the way, that last record thing, that's a Prince thing. I nicked that. I mean, that's from like, you know, Purple Rain somewhere back in the old days. It's just that typical sort of, you have a major thing, you know. The last chord probably is where I go off a little bit weird. There's a little note. Always like going to this melodic minor thingy. I had no idea how the hell that was. Well, a song prior to the first one I played you, I've told Ollie about this. I just had this really weird leaning to a particular melody. So if I play a D, a major, most guys will go, you've got to sing the major, you know, great. If you're lucky, maybe. My one was that. I get mistaken for an Indian half the time anyway, but that just really doesn't help, you know. Turns out it was the Hindu scale, the fifth mode of melodic minor. But for me, it's a very natural sound. It's something which I hear all the time. I put it into so much stuff, it's not funny. It's the little secret sauce. Even when I was playing Iron Maiden in my metal bands and stuff like that as a kid, I would slip that stuff in. I would naturally go there. And I still remember that quite funny. I got to play in a lot of bands when I was 18 years old because I had a different sound to everybody else. I was aware of that I was doing different things. I wasn't always staying to minor. I was always trusting my ear. One of the best experiences of my life was jamming with this really crap band over in New Lynn. And got to meet one of my best mates, the drummer, Richard. And did a ripping solo, went screaming up the neck, hey, sweet as, whatever. It's all just E minor, C and D, you know, really, whatever. And, but I came down. I had, you know, I could see the stuff on the guitar, but I don't really look a lot of the time. No matter how much work I've done on the things, I always just, screw it, you know, my ears tell me go here. So I go there, but I still vividly remember being completely lost. When I came back down in the descension. And so when you have like most people would, whereas I went, had a brighter sound first, and then it went to the dark sound. Well, you know, so I made the minor. This is playing Maiden. This is like sacrilege. You shouldn't do this type of stuff, but it sounded so bloody good. No one ever complained, and I got more gigs. But it was just from that thing of going, okay, forgetting the intellectual crap, listening, you know, and it paid off. Shit, paid off great. you know. Yeah, so that's how I write music. That's what I do, you know. I come from a family of deep thinkers. It drives me crazy, you know. I'm not going to get into that, but let's put it this way. You drew a picture. When I was 5 years old, I had to explain it to my grandfather as to what the hell the meaning was. So everything has to have some purpose. It has to have some point. Poor Ollie here has been one of my students in years, has learnt that one. You know, I don't want fluff. You know, there has to be a reason. If it's not real, well, it's not good enough. But that's my personal thing. I don't teach anymore nowadays, so I don't put anyone through hell. But you know, if you are a person who's going to play because you play a chord, that's great. But you know, I'd really recommend that you should just try and find that first note that you truly heard. You know, it's not always the one in the chord, that type of thing. You can have a lot more fun. And if you can go from sort of, you know, maybe doing something like that and then inspiring yourself by listening and reacting and then hunting for it, the answers aren't always completely right in front of your face. You know, because there's so many notes you can play on top of that chord that will sound great. And then use that to inspire you to move on to another one. That's cool. You know, and that's pretty much what I've done. That's all the stuff. For those who don't know, I played predominantly rock instrumental music throughout the 90s. I've played all over the place. Those tunes are ancient. They're absolutely ancient. Like I said, the guitar I started playing in 88. I wrote some of these things well before that. Full form, that would have been 87, you know, and some of those songs took me all over the place. Another tune, I'm probably going too long here now, you know, basically was... I just sung a little bit. Yeah, just sing. Listen to your ear. Find your inner ear. You know, break out the boundaries of the stuff that sit with your physicality and your instrument. Sometimes just be peaceful. You know, I love the quiet because I've got so much noise going on. And listen to it, pay attention to it, sing it, record it. You know, it's the ultimate backwards, forwards thing. You can fast forward, speed up, everything, because it's all in here. I couldn't believe I could remember that damn song, The Miracle, but it was just because as soon as I remembered the it was there, got you. That is 30-something bloody years old. So, come on, thank you very much.